Thank you so much to our Mile High Band, to Bradley Lucana and Tom, our music director. They create these experiences of fluorescence for us every week, and that's exactly what I want to talk to you all about today, is fluorescence, the flowering of your soul. I love this word. It's just so fun to say because it encapsulates the very illumination that happens when we're connected and turned in and tapped into and plugged into that divine nature that is within every single one of us. And when we're in touch with that divine spark, we can't help but share it with the world. The word comes from the Latin root flor, which means flower, and it means that state of flourishing or the act of bursting in bloom. Doesn't that just seem so inviting? Florescence. But with our recent global disconnection and separation and the polarization that we've all been experiencing, it can be very difficult to reach in and tap into our soul. And it's this time that it is no time like the present. Because as we begin to connect and to feel that fluorescence and to flower into life, we are here to connect first within ourselves and then with everyone else in the world. But I know that sometimes when I lose connection with my soul, I can end up feeling lost or numb. And if it goes on for quite some time, I begin to feel this sense of emptiness within. Like, I can't quite get to that animation of my life. And I feel as if over time I swim on the surface of things, and then I begin to crave a deeper meaning, a deeper connection. And if it goes on even longer, I can drop into this sense of this zombie-like trance in which I move about and do, and I get busy and I avoid. And then I end up feeling supremely detached from the meaning. And I feel detached not only from myself, but from everyone else around me as well. The Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, now puts out a yearly report that is called our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation Report. And this year, it estimates that 1 in 2 people who live in the United States report feeling often feelings of loneliness and even despair. And the mortality impact of feeling lonely or being isolated is now equal or similar to that of the impact of smoking. So I'd like us to consider today how fluorescence, or returning again and again to expand that connection or our awareness, as Dr. Patty so beautifully prayed, that our connection is never, never gone, but that we expand our awareness of that connection within our inner world. And that not only helps us to bloom, but that it activates a sense of joy within us and helps us open to a greater and greater sense of interconnectedness with all of the world around us, including each other. The hardiest of flowers, they found, that withstand drought and storm are those plants that have clusters of flowers that bloom in little clusters together. And isn't that just us? We too are wired to be communal and social beings, stronger and more hardy in community as we flower together. But where can we begin? Sometimes it can feel as if there is emotional residue, maybe resentment or non-forgiveness or other grievances, other strong emotions that seem to be clouding our access to our soul. And it reminds me of this classic story of a novice monk in a monastery. And he goes to the master after he clearly has been contemplating and mulling over the question of the nature of his soul for quite some time. And so he goes to his master and he says, please tell me, I need to know what happens after we die. And the master says, I don't know. And the novice gets disturbed and frustrated and he says, but I thought you were supposed to be a monk. And the response is, I am, but I'm not a dead one. The good news is we don't have to croak or die in order to know that sense of the essence of the joy within our soul and the nature of our soul. In New Thought and Science of Mind teachings and practices, we have a wealth of rich soil available to guide us every step of the way to the blooming of our souls. As Josh mentioned in the introduction, well, he didn't mention this part, he actually meant, I found New Thought teachings 32 years ago, but it was 20 years ago, this July, that I walked through the doors of Mile High Church. My ex-husband and I, thank you, thank God, really, thank God. My ex-husband and I were searching for a spiritual home and a spiritual foundation in which to raise our two daughters. And at that time in my life, I was struggling greatly with all forms of anxiety, from panic attacks to hypochondria to every form you could find anxiety. I was practicing it. And it has been a theme in my life. It's one of my key catalysts, if you will, for spiritual guidance and healing. But it was Sunday, July 13th, 2003. And the reason I know that is because 2 weeks ago, I began, at the suggestion of my beautiful women's circle, to read a book on prosperity. And I began the spring cleaning of clearing out massive amounts of stuff. And one of those things were journals. My goal was to reduce 7 bins of journals, which all really said the same thing, to 1 bin of journals. And so I would get up really early in the morning and I would begin, my goal was to throw 3 out a day. And so that morning, a couple of weeks ago, I was going through the journals and I came across this journal. It was getting ready to head its way out the door. I just didn't throw out journals that had stories of my daughters in it, but I happened upon this very entry, which you're going to see up on the screen. The journal entry of when I found Mile High Church. And it says, we finally found a church that satisfies both Paul and I, my ex-husband. It is great. I'm not a really good with words sometimes. It is great. The science of religion. It is called Mile High Church. I was crying during the service. It was so wonderful. The message was on living life enthusiastically and opening your heart to God. The minister had so many wonderful quotes. I am going to listen on the internet and to hear them and record them on my mirror. And you can notice, too, the image on the other side of the page. When I saw this, I just was floored. I didn't know this entry existed, but there's a picture of a cathedral. And where the rose window would be, there's a sun open to the sky and the birds are flowing out. And at the bottom of the page, there's a poem from Rumi and it reads, I can't explain the goings or the comings. You enter suddenly and I am nowhere again. Inside the majesty. Little did I know that day I entered a portal of transformation. It would absolutely change the course of my life, and it would set me on a healing journey that allows me to stand here today. I immediately signed up for the Science of Mind and Spirit courses, and then the journey began. You know, one of the first obstacles to expressing more greatly my soul was to face that anxiety. And don't you feel maybe in your own life that Spirit knows what it is that you need in order to move those things that are in the way of our access to our soul? And Spirit's nudge in this moment was that I joined the choir. I had never even heard the choir sing, but there I was auditioning to be in the choir. And what a blessing it would turn to be. There will be a pic that you'll see up on the screen of our amazing, some of you might see yourselves up in there, from our amazing choir in those days. And we sang in the Vote auditorium because we hadn't built this beautiful teal sanctuary yet. And I stood in the very back corner row behind a plant in front of an air vent, and not one single person knew that I was up there. Literally no one knew except for me and maybe the choir director and the other altos around me. But I would stand there on the stage, and when we would begin to sing, I would become so nervous that my face would start to go numb in between my eyebrows. And I would hyperventilate, and I couldn't breathe, so I was lip-syncing the words to the song. So sorry, Vicki Burrichter, our choir director, if you're watching or you hear this. I wasn't even singing, but I had this paralyzing fear as I stood there, and I would begin to pinch my knuckles behind me because I thought, if I pass out on this stage, then they will absolutely know that I'm up here, and it will be mortifying if Dr. Roger has to stop the service to resuscitate me. It was paralyzing fear. But there was a moment one Sunday where we were singing the 23rd Psalm. And I was singing, "Yea, though I walk through the shadow of the valley of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me." And in that moment, I heard inside my mind, have faith. And it was a turning point. It was a healing moment where I really was able to begin to truly face those monumental fears and to use these spiritual practices to begin to melt those walls that kept me so paralyzed in my life. And I share this experience because it is just one of the ways that all of these powerful teachings and these powerful practices and all of the faith traditions too that we bring into our teachings here at Mile High Church have brought deep healing into my life. So I wonder if you might check in with yourself right now and just consider your own life, taking a look if there is an area that you feel a sense and a call that wants more of your attention or wants to be brought more fully into your awareness and healing within your own soul. And I'd invite you to hold that space within you as we move through our exploration of Florescence this morning, keeping it close to your heart. I'd like to share 3 ways that you can begin to, or maybe continue to flower your soul into that florescence. And the first one is to grow secure roots. And that comes from creating a sanctuary within. I don't think it's possible to continue blooming our soul until we are able to establish a deep sense of safety and security and true refuge within our own inner world. And so an entry point is to go within and begin to calm your mind. As Josh was sharing in the readings today, Carolyn Mace so beautifully teaches, we have to calm our mind. It's not about ceasing our thinking. It's about ceasing our identification with our thoughts. And so when we're able to do that, we're able to create inside of us a sense of deep relaxation and peace, a safety to an extent that we're able to pull ourselves and become fully available to the present moment. And it is that way that we begin to deepen and to court our inner relationship with that divine spark within. Ernest Holmes asks in the Science of Mind textbook, he actually asks these questions, how do we do this? And he says, we begin to achieve a greater realization of our unity with God, which is the truth, only by penetrating deeper and yet deeper into our own divine nature, pushing further and further back into the infinite. And where do we do this, he asks? There's no place but within us that we can do it. And no one can do it for us but ourselves. And so we journey into our hearts to be still and to spend time listening to our inner world. Author Mirabai Starr says, "Enter the garden where the walls melt and the trees blossom in vibrant quietude." So I invite us to consider, how can we set aside that bit of time as often as possible? Can you give yourself that spaciousness where there are no constraints, no distractions, nothing to rush off to, just for a little bit, to pause in the depths of yourself? I used to have this vision that I would feel when I was creating that inner sanctuary, that sense of safety within myself, that I would be sitting at the base of the ocean, on the ocean floor, and I would be held by all of that water, and that life would be crashing in the waves way up above me, but that I could just sit there in the depths. And so, as we play with a sense of the infinite, in the soul, it is timeless. It is that spaciousness that we want to tap into so that we can feel held and protected, and then perhaps catch that glimpse of the dimension of the sacred that is in everything. So let's do it right now in this moment. Perhaps you feel a bit of the air on your cheek, or you tune in to the sensation of your feet, and you feel your hands. And then you turn your attention to the center of your chest, and you just bring your awareness to all of those sensations. And you might ask yourself if there's anything in the way right now of you feeling your body in this moment. Because as this is what they teach in Buddhism, and it is known in the tradition of Buddhism as embodied presence, where you begin to bring your awareness fully into the body again and again, and that draws it out of the mind. Out of the mind where I was always thinking in anxiety. I was thinking of what had happened in the past, and I was grasping for what might happen in the future. But I had to pull the energy again and again in order to embody this body so that I could be fully available to know and to sense that connection within my soul. This brings us inner strength. This grows our strong roots, and strong roots are always grown in the present now, in the present moment. That is where our true refuge lies. So we stand strong together within ourselves, no matter what is going on out in the world. And that brings us to the second point in Florescence, is that once we have those strong roots and that sense of safety, then we have this inner strength and the soul stamina and the ability to face the shadows as we are seeking the light. And we have that space to embrace within us established. Rainer Maria Rilke said, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once with beauty and courage. Perhaps everything that frightens us is, at its deepest essence, something helpless that just wants our love." My prayer partner and I have been discussing a very powerful book, and it's called No Bad Parts by Dr. Richard Schwartz. And this book is about healing trauma and restoring wholeness with the internal family systems model of healing. And with this comes the idea that all of us have all of these various parts within ourselves. And within us, there are these parts that need our attention and need our love, and they interfere with our adult interactions in the world. Not only that, but the person that we want to be out in the world. And, these parts keep us in states of reactivity and defensiveness and protection for good reason. They were there, they developed there in those times in our life where things were going on, and we needed those parts in order to feel that sense of safety, which now we've just discussed is coming from within. So what I find in this theory and in this work that Dr. Schwartz has put out there, I love it because it is such a compassionate model. It allows us to focus on and really tap into those places within ourselves that are hurt, and to view other people in the same way. In that way, it becomes not I am bad or you are a bad person. It becomes there's this parts within me that need attention and need healing, and within you as well. So he provides in that book these amazing meditations where you're able to go in and meet with these parts and to give them voice, to hear what it is that they need, to give them what it is that they need, and to invite them back into an integration with what he calls the higher self, or what we're referring to today as our soul. And so it's such a beautiful process, because as we begin that integration, the more that those parts are seen and heard and loved and recognized, the more they're able to lay down that defensiveness and protection, and to be integrated within us, knowing that with our inner refuge, God's got this. I've got this in my collaboration, in my openness, in my connection, in my awareness of the connection within me. And so John O'Donohue refers to this as inner hospitality in his beautiful book, Anam Cara. He says, when you decide to practice inner hospitality, the self-torment ceases. The abandoned, neglected, and negative selves come into a seamless unity. The soul is wise and subtle. It recognizes that unity fosters belonging. The soul adores unity. What you separate, the soul joins. And that brings us to our third point of florescence, in that integration that comes from our spiritual work and our practice. As we turn to it again and again, we slowly begin to illuminate and to untether and to free our souls, to unfurl and to effortlessly share from our inner beauty. We could look at it as the greening of our soul. 12th century German Benedictine abbess Hildegard de Bingen is a prime example of florescence. She was a masterful poet, a composer, a student of medicine, an herbalist, and a Christian mystic. And she referred to the greening of our souls as vireditas. Just say that too today, vireditas. And vireditas is that vigor, that fruitfulness, that vitality, that lushness of our soul expression as we immerse in our healing and simply allow ourselves to be and to share from the essence of who we are. The greening of your soul and the unfurling of the beauty happens over time. As we know, there's no rushing the blooming of the flower. You can't force it open or it will die. But it does, when allowed to unfurl petal by petal, it does end up in florescence. And so your longing for deeper connection will guide you to what your soul needs to fully share and live from the aroma of your being. Longing is the gentle nudges of your true nature wanting to be known. Sufi teacher Llewellyn Van Lee writes, "Longing is the golden thread of the heart's desire. If we follow this thread, it will take us away from the world of the ego and the mind to the eternal dimension of the heart. It is here in the innermost chamber of the heart that the beloved reveals his secret face and shares with his servants the mysteries of love. Those who have given themselves to love's longing step across the threshold from duality into the truth of unity. In love's essence, there is only oneness. The lover becomes so lost in love that only the beloved remains." So as we close today in prayer, I want to bring that beautiful Buddhist mantra that Tom was singing so beautifully back into the room, Om Mani Padme Hum, which literally means the jewel in the lotus. The jewel in the lotus of your life is that very jewel of wisdom and consciousness and beautiful divine nature, that divine spark that exists at the center of your being. And so this jewel, we now are going to invite, perhaps if you'd like to join me, I'm going to begin with a mudra. And a mudra in the yogic tradition is a hand gesture that facilitates the expansion of consciousness and the movement of energy with our intention. And so we begin today with Anjali Mudra, which is the prayer pose, where with it you can press the edges of the thumbs right into the center of your heart, inviting that awakening to be here right now. And if you found an intention for your life or an area of your life that you've been holding dear throughout our exploration of Florescence, that you are inviting into Florescence, I'd invite you to bring that right into your heart right now as we move from the Anjali Mudra into the Padma Mudra or the Lotus Mudra, in which we peel back the central fingers to form the lotus. And place that intention right into the center of your lotus, feeling it right in the center of your being, holding it in your heart as we move into prayer. And then Tom closes with this beautiful mantra. We open right here in this moment, feeling that eternal love that is the living spirit that is in all things. That living spirit that moves in and through each heart here, that speaks in and through each beautiful soul. And right here in this moment, I know that we are all rooted so very firmly in this beautiful truth that is love. That is connection. That is the florescence. For florescence is the very nature of our souls. It is who we are. And so in this moment, I also know that if there is anything in your life that is in the way, that just stands in the way of any person right here of reaching more deeply into that essence and nature of their soul, that it simply falls away. It's released with love, with care, with compassion. And then we just open right now to feel that energy of love, to feel the nature of Om Mani Padme Hum as we open to receive Tom's song.
Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum.
now we release this mudra with great gratitude, feeling and knowing that it is absolutely done. And with that thanksgiving, we say, and so it is.